Have you ever felt like your presence is invisible? Like no one truly sees you? Not because you're absent, but because you've given too much of yourself away. You talk, you show up, you try, and yet something in you still feels hollow, disconnected, fading. That's not just emotional fatigue, it's a signal from the universe, a call to return, a whisper from your soul. You are not where you belong. Carl Jung once said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But how can we become when we're constantly available to others, yet unavailable to ourselves? The truth is uncomfortable. Your energy, your silence, your very presence has been diluted. The more you give without boundaries, the more invisible you become. And when your presence becomes scarce, something mystical happens, the universe shifts, people respond differently. You remember who you are beneath all the roles and noise. In today's video, we're going to explore 8 powerful truths that Jungian psychology and ancient wisdom reveal about your presence, your energy, and your soul's sacred boundaries. This isn't just about self-help, it's about spiritual survival. If you've been feeling overwhelmed, lost in constant performance, or like your soul is quietly screaming beneath the surface, you need to hear this. What we're about to uncover could change how you see yourself and how the world responds to you forever. Most people scroll through life, unconscious of the deep, energetic patterns that are draining them. But you're not like most people, or você não estaria aqui. So stay with me until the end. These insights might awaken something in you that's been buried for too long. And if you feel a calling to explore more of this journey with us, don't forget to subscribe to Celestial Truths. So many watch these videos and never subscribe, but your soul deserves to stay connected to this path. This isn't just a video, it's a mirror, and what you see here might just be the beginning of your return to self. There is a kind of presence that doesn't need to announce itself. It enters quietly, yet shifts the energy of an entire room. The seeker, the one who walks the path of inner truth, must learn to recognize this type of presence, not in the loudness of words, but in the stillness of being. Carl Jung once suggested that the most powerful aspects of the psyche are often the most hidden, and silence, when anchored in self-awareness, becomes a form of spiritual radiance. In a noisy world addicted to external validation, the one who dwells in their own silence becomes almost mystical. It is not a withdrawal, but a return to center, a reunion with the self. Think of the archetype of the wise hermit, walking slowly through the forest, lantern in hand. He says little, but all who cross his path feel the weight of his gaze, not as judgment, but as pure awareness. This is the power of spiritual maturity. It doesn't beg for attention because it knows its value. In psychological terms, silence becomes a container. It holds the unconscious without trying to dominate it. It invites projection, but remains untouched. The universe, too, speaks in silence, in symbols, dreams, synchronicities. Those who embrace this frequency begin to notice signs others overlook. A crow circling overhead, a number that repeats, a stranger's eyes that seem to know you. This kind of presence, born in silence, is a force of individuation. It signals that the ego no longer needs to perform. It simply is. And in this being there is power. There's a strange beauty in watching someone who doesn't need to prove anything. Their absence speaks as loud as their presence. They have learned to become a symbol themselves. The mystical quality they carry is not theatrical, it's cosmic. They have aligned with the rhythm of the universe. The soul becomes magnetic, not because it demands attention, but because it carries depth. And in a shallow world, depth is irresistible. In your everyday life, reflect on how you enter a room. Is it with the noise of nervous energy, or with the calm confidence of someone in alignment with their truth? Practice sitting in silence, not just without words, but without inner noise. Let your presence echo beyond language. Meditate on the breath, observe your dreams, write what emerges in the quiet hours of dawn. These are not passive acts, they are rituals of reconnection. The more you honor the sacredness of silence, the more others begin to feel it. They won't know what it is exactly, but they'll be drawn to it. It's not charisma, it's consciousness. So remember, silence is not the absence of sound, it's the presence of self. Those who master it become living temples, transmitting messages from the unseen. And just as the stars shine without making a sound, the awakened soul begins to influence the world without needing to say a word. But even this is just the beginning. For once one understands the value of sacred silence, the question becomes, how much of ourselves have we been giving away without discernment? The soul was never meant to be constantly available. In a universe governed by rhythm, cycles, and sacred pauses, the modern obsession with being perpetually reachable fractures the spirit. The disciple of inner wisdom must realize, giving too much, too often, without alignment, leads not to connection, but to energetic erosion. Jung would call this the inflation of the ego. When the persona tries to please the world, the self begins to wither. In trying to be everything for everyone, you risk becoming nothing for yourself. What looks like generosity may in truth be a form of spiritual disconnection, a forgetting of boundaries, and worse, of identity. Imagine the archetype of the empath, open-hearted, radiant, but drained. She feels everything, responds to everything, until there is nothing left for herself. Her presence becomes diluted, her essence fragmented across the needs of others. And though she means well, the universe begins to whisper, this is not the path. There is a mystica in knowing when to withdraw, not as retreat, but as protection, as a reclamation of energy. Being constantly accessible is like leaving your door open to every passerby. Eventually, your sacred space becomes crowded with noise, chaos, and confusion. Spiritually speaking, every act of presence is also a choice of direction. Who do you allow into your field? What conversations drain you? Which commitments were made from fear, not love? The seeker must become discerning. Saying yes to everyone is often a disguised no to oneself. And no mystic, no alchemist of the soul can transmute anything without first conserving their own fire. Emotional burnout is not a flaw. It is a signal. It speaks the language of imbalance. And in the silence after collapse, a deeper truth emerges. Your energy is not infinite, but sacred. So how do you live this truth? Practically, begin by observing how your body responds when someone asks something of you. Tight shoulders, shallow breath, mental irritation. These are signs. Journal your weekly commitments. Circle the ones that feel heavy, unnecessary, or guilt-driven. Then start small. Decline one thing that drains you. Rest instead. Watch how the universe reacts. You may notice that the spiritual field shifts around you, that in protecting your own essence, your presence becomes even more magnetic. The less you force, the more you flow. And once this lesson begins to root itself in your consciousness, you'll notice something powerful. Not everyone deserves your presence. Not every call is yours to answer. And perhaps the greatest act of love is no longer overextending, but choosing wisely when and for whom you show up. But if the seeker begins to reclaim their energy, then what becomes of the boundaries that define who they truly are? There comes a moment on every spiritual path when the seeker realizes love without boundaries is not love, it is abandonment. In the mystical architecture of the psyche, boundaries are sacred thresholds. They mark where your essence begins and the world ends. Carl Jung taught that individuation is not about merging with everything, but about becoming whole within. And to become whole, one must learn the alchemical art of saying no, not as an act of cruelty, but as an act of reverence, for the self, for the journey, and for the silent language of the universe that guides our evolution. Picture the symbol of the magic circle, used by mystics for centuries to summon, to protect, to define. That circle is your boundary. It is an energetic declaration. Only what aligns with my truth may enter. When we lack this circle, chaos enters. We become vulnerable to the projections, expectations, and demands of others. And worse, we begin to shape-shift to fit in, losing fragments of our soul in every forced yes. Spirituality without boundaries is like a temple without walls, beautiful but constantly invaded. The sacred cannot survive where everything is permitted. Learning to say no is a rite of passage. It is a confrontation with the shadow of guilt, that inner voice that whispers, "You are selfish." But the deeper voice, the one that echoes from the self, responds, "You are sacred." Boundaries are not walls of separation. They are bridges of clarity. They teach others how to approach you, how to honor your space, and more. Importantly, they teach you what is worthy of your presence. In this mystical dance, every limit becomes a mirror. It reveals not just what you won't accept, but what you truly value. In the practical realm, this looks like refining your energy exchanges. You don't need to explain your no. A simple, grounded, "I'm not available for that," is enough. Observe who resists your boundaries. They reveal who benefited from your lack of them. Journal your patterns of overgiving. Practice the subtle. Pause before you commit to anything. In that pause, you meet yourself, and in meeting yourself, you realign with your essence. It is here, in this space between reaction and response, that you remember, your life is not a negotiation, it is a temple. As this awareness deepens, something begins to shift. People treat you differently. The universe responds differently. You realize that setting boundaries was never about keeping others out. It was about letting yourself in. The more you honor your sacred space, the more you step into true spiritual sovereignty. And once you taste that sovereignty, a deeper layer of discernment begins to unfold. Who, after all, is truly worthy of your inner fire? In the sacred unfolding of consciousness, there comes a time when the seeker understands not everything and not everyone, merece sua energia. Emotional maturity is not the absence of feeling, but the conscious choice of where to invest one's essence. Imagine your energy as a flame, ancient, luminous, connected to the rhythm of the universe itself. Would you leave it burning in places where no one seeks its warmth? Would you offer your sacred fire to those who only wish to consume, never to honor? The mystic learns, often through pain, that selective presence is not arrogance. It is wisdom born from spiritual discernment. Carl Jung often emphasized the role of projection in human relationships. We project what we refuse to see in ourselves, and we attract what remains unresolved. This is why, without emotional clarity, we may feel drawn to situations that exhaust us, or people who mirror our unhealed wounds. But the path of individuation demands something different. It requires stillness, observation, silence. Who drains your spirit? What environments dim your light? The answers do not require force. They reveal themselves in the subtle language of the soul. This is the work of the seeker, to listen, to feel, to protect. Spirituality is not passive acceptance. It is fierce discernment. Just like the cosmos, which expands and contracts, your presence must also flow in cycles. There are seasons for giving and seasons for retreating. When you are selective with your energy, you affirm your alignment with the universe. You stop feeding chaos and begin nourishing clarity. Think of the archetype of the high priestess, veiled, intuitive, immovable. She does not fear missing out because she knows her value. Her yes is powerful because her no is rooted in truth. This is not emotional distance, it is energetic sovereignty. How can one embody this in daily life? Begin by tracking your inner response to interactions. After a meeting, a message, a conversation, do you feel lighter or heavier, more connected or fragmented? This awareness becomes your compass. Create moments of solitude to recharge, a walk under the sky, silent meditation, journaling at night. These rituals are not luxury, they are medicine. Protect your mornings, be intentional with your evenings, and above all, do not apologize for choosing peace over performance. It is in these choices that your soul begins to reclaim its rightful place in the cosmic dance. As this practice deepens, you'll begin to witness something extraordinary. Life reorganizes itself around your energetic integrity. The right people stay, the wrong ones fade. Invitations align with your inner purpose. And most importantly, you feel whole, not because you gave more, but because you finally gave from the right place. Yet even this wisdom leads to another question, one that echoes through the invisible halls of the unconscious. How do we hold our power without becoming hardened by it? To feel deeply is a gift, but to master what one does with those feelings is the true initiation. On the path of awakening, the seeker learns that spirituality is not about suppressing emotion, but about transmuting it. Jung once wrote that emotion is the chief source of becoming conscious. But without direction, emotion becomes a storm, powerful yet destructive. The wise one, however, becomes the storm's eye, calm, still, observing. This is not coldness, it is cosmic precision. It is the understanding that every reaction is a potential leak in your spiritual power. And that power must be directed, not dispersed. In psychological terms, impulse is the realm of the ego, immediate, raw, reactive. But the self speaks slowly, through symbols, dreams, and insight. When you pause before reacting, you're not repressing. You're allowing time for the higher voice to surface. The universe rewards this stillness. Imagine the archetype of the warrior monk, fierce in capacity, gentle in presence. He knows his strength, but does not flaunt it. He responds with intention, not compulsion. This is the art of spiritual self-command. It doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you've chosen to feel with awareness. True control is not a cage. It is a chalice. It holds emotion without spilling it. And in that holding, transformation occurs. Anger becomes clarity. Grief becomes depth. Desire becomes devotion. Those who misunderstand this path often confuse it with emotional numbness. But the seeker knows to feel everything and still choose peace is the most mystical act of all. It is a defiance against chaos, a refusal to be ruled by the shadow. In this restraint, there is liberation. In this quiet, there is power. And that power begins to shape reality itself. To live this wisdom, observe your triggers, not to judge them, but to study them. When someone says something that stirs you, pause. Ask, what part of me is reacting, and what part of me is watching? Journal these moments. Watch for patterns. Practice the 3-breath pause before responding to anything emotionally charged. This space becomes your sacred ground. Over time, you'll find that what once set you on fire now barely flickers. And that, too, is growth, not visible, but profound, like a mountain, unmoved by passing winds. But with every step toward this internal mastery, a deeper inquiry begins to emerge. If we can choose how we respond to the world, then what else might we have the power to release? What else, heavy, hidden, outdated, have we been carrying that no longer serves our becoming? There's an ancient truth that echoes across all mystical paths. The more you carry, the less you rise. The seeker, the one attuned to the deeper rhythms of the universe, eventually discovers that letting go isn't a loss but a sacred initiation. Carl Jung spoke of the necessity of psychic death, the shedding of outdated parts of the self, so that the true self may emerge. It is through release that rebirth becomes possible. Letting go is not weakness. It is an act of inner strength. It says to the universe, I trust what comes next more than I fear what I must leave behind. Imagine walking through a dense forest, carrying a heavy pack filled with old identities, unresolved stories, lingering resentments and outdated dreams. At first it feels like protection, but with each step the burden grows. Your soul begins to whisper, sometimes through exhaustion, sometimes through synchronicity, that it's time to surrender. Not to give up, but to give back what no longer serves your evolution. The spiritual path is not about collecting more, it's about refining, distilling, becoming light enough to fly. In a universe where everything vibrates, heaviness becomes misalignment. There is a mystical kind of grace that arrives when you let go consciously. It's like opening a window after years of stale air. At first, the release feels raw, maybe even terrifying. But then, clarity, space, peace. And in that space, life begins to rearrange itself. You become receptive to new frequencies, people who resonate with your truth, opportunities aligned with your soul, visions you had buried under the noise. The universe doesn't punish you for letting go. It rewards you. But you must first have the courage to empty your hands so they can receive what truly matters. In daily life, this practice can begin with something simple yet symbolic. Write down everything you feel is weighing you down, a belief, a role, a fear, a relationship. Read it aloud, then burn it. Let the smoke carry your intention into the cosmos. This is not fantasy, it's spiritual strategy. You're declaring that your energy is too sacred to be entangled with what no longer vibrates at your level. Journaling, dream work, quiet observation, all these help you recognize what's ready to be released. Your body always knows. Tightness, fatigue, restlessness, these are signals from the self, calling you back to balance. And once you begin to live in this liberated space, you'll realize that letting go was never about loss. It was about returning to essence, returning to peace, returning to the present moment, where life actually happens. But even in this stillness, another sacred truth begins to emerge from the shadows. If we can let go without fear, can we also love without attachment? To love purely, without clinging, without need, without fear, is one of the highest forms of spiritual maturity. And yet, most love in this world is born not from wholeness, but from a hidden hunger. The seeker on the path of individuation must come to face this truth, that the love we give is only as free as the love we give ourselves. Carl Jung understood that unexamined relationships often become mirrors for our unmet needs. When we depend on another to feel whole, we're not in love, we're in longing. And longing, while poetic, can easily become a prison. There's a difference between connection and attachment. One flows with the universe, ever-evolving, respectful of freedom. The other tightens its grip, fearing abandonment, suffocating in expectation. Real love is expansive. It allows each soul to grow, to shift, to evolve without collapsing the bond. Imagine two stars, orbiting each other, each with their own gravity, their own light, drawn together but never consumed. That is the kind of spiritual connection the mystic yearns for, sacred union without fusion, a bond that doesn't ask you to shrink, but to shine. Dependency is often disguised as devotion. It says, "I can't live without you," and the world applauds, but the soul knows better. The truth is, if your entire emotional world crumbles when someone walks away, it was never love. It was identity, wrapped in illusion. Love without dependency, on the other hand, is a gift, not a transaction. It says, "I choose you, not because I lack anything, but because our connection adds meaning to my already full life." That choice, made freely, not compulsively, is the essence of true spiritualidad. To live this kind of love requires inner work. Observe your patterns in relationships. Do you lose yourself? Do you feel abandoned easily? Do you compromise your truth to keep someone close? These are invitations, not judgments. Begin building your inner sanctuary. Create rituals that reconnect you with yourself. Morning solitude, evening reflections, creative expression, dream work. Practice being alone without feeling lonely. That space is where your essence strengthens. From there, any love you offer becomes a blessing, not a need. And in return, you attract those who are also whole, not those seeking someone to complete them. And when you taste that kind of love, sovereign, mystical, deeply human, you'll never again settle for emotional dependency, because you'll have touched something eternal, the union of two souls walking side by side, not leaning on each other for balance, but walking in harmony. Yet this sacred understanding leads to an even deeper truth. If love doesn't require approval or validation, then what does it really mean to live authentically, without the weight of others' expectations? At some point along the spiritual path, the seeker must confront a haunting question: whose life am I really living? The need for approval, subtle, insidious, creeps into our decisions, our identities, even our dreams. Carl Jung warned of the dangers of living through the mask, the persona, molded by collective expectations. When we live only to be accepted, we abandon the self, and when the self is abandoned, life becomes hollow, performative. Spiritualidad, at its core, demands authenticity, and authenticity requires the courage to disappoint others in order to remain true to yourself. The universe does not ask you to be liked, it asks you to be aligned. Yet from childhood, we are conditioned to seek validation, good grades, polite behavior, fitting in. We become performers in someone else's story. But the mystic begins to awaken when they hear a deeper voice, quiet but undeniable, that says, "You are not here to be approved, you are here to remember." When you stop chasing approval, something mystical happens. Your presence becomes whole. Your actions carry a different frequency, not louder but truer. The universe responds not with applause but with synchronicity. Imagine an artist painting not for praise but for expression, a tree growing not to be admired, but because it cannot do otherwise. That is the way of the awakened soul. It follows its inner rhythm, regardless of external reward. It trusts that the right people, the right moments, the right purpose will align naturally, not because of forced belonging, but because of energetic resonance. When you no longer shape your identity around acceptance, you become magnetic in a different way, not to the masses, but to those who see the real you. And that kind of connection is sacred. How can this be lived? Begin by observing where in your life you still seek validation. Social media, relationships, career choices. Where are you editing your truth? Try saying no when you'd usually say yes out of obligation. Notice who you become in silence when no one is watching. Journal your thoughts uncensored. Meditate on the archetype of the rebel, not as one who fights, but as one who refuses to betray their soul. This isn't about rebellion for its own sake. It's about remembering that your worth is not up for negotiation. You're not here to be understood by everyone, only by those who speak the language of your essence. And once you shed the need for approval, a new kind of peace takes root. You walk differently, breathe differently. You no longer need the world to reflect your value, because you've seen it for yourself in dreams, in solitude, in the quiet intimacy of your own becoming. And yet, with all masks gone, a final door opens. What kind of life begins when you fully return to yourself? Unfiltered, unafraid, and undeniably free. What part of you have you been silencing just to be accepted? And what would happen if, starting today, you chose presence over performance? I want to know, which of these truths resonated most deeply with your soul? Share your experience in the comments. Your insight might be exactly what someone else needs to read on their path of awakening. And if this journey touched something sacred in you, don't leave without subscribing to Celestial Truths. Activate the notifications, because the next video that appears on your screen might carry the exact message your soul has been waiting for. I'll see you there. With reverence, Celestial Truths.